Write down your experience when you used to buy a condom. So, this is probably something a lot of people can relate to. I was about 17, and my girlfriend and I had talked about getting intimate. We knew it was time to take the next step, but I had zero idea how to go about buying condoms. I wasn't exactly the smoothest guy at the time, and the thought of walking into a store and picking up condoms made me feel like I was going to implode with embarrassment. But, one night, I couldn't put it off any longer. I told myself, this is it, you're a man now, just go do it. I drove to the closest CVS, and the second I pulled into the parking lot, my nerves kicked in. I took a deep breath and walked inside. There was no turning back. I got to the aisle, and I swear the selection was overwhelming. I was trying to act casual, but I couldn't help but look around like someone was watching me. I spent what felt like an eternity staring at the boxes, trying to figure out if I should go for the ultra-thin ones, the textured ones, or the ones with extra pleasure. I had no idea what any of it meant, honestly, but I was overthinking everything. Finally, I grabbed a pack of the regular ones because, basic felt safe, and made my way to the checkout. The cashier was an older woman, and I swear, she looked at me with this smile like she knew. I couldn't even look her in the eye. I handed her the box, and when she scanned it, it felt like a spotlight was shining on me. I remember she asked if I wanted anything else, and I mumbled, no, that's it. She didn't even flinch, but in my mind, the whole store heard the beep of the scanner. When I got back in the car, I just sat there for a few minutes, staring at the bag like it was some kind of magical artifact. I remember laughing nervously at how stupidly nervous I'd been. At the end of the day, it wasn't a big deal. I just had to go through that initial awkwardness. And now, every time I buy condoms, it's no big deal. But that first time, man, that was something else. Alright, so I was around 18, and I'd been dating my girlfriend for a few months. Things were getting pretty serious, and it was becoming clear we might need some protection. I was nervous as hell, mostly because I didn't want to make it awkward. I went to the store, and of course, I picked the busiest time of day. I swear every aisle had at least one person in it, and the condom aisle was like a spotlight just following me. I knew what I needed to do, but my heart was racing. I stood there, staring at the shelf, trying to decide between the pleasure ones and the ribbed ones, completely overwhelmed by the option. I didn't want to look like a total noob, but I also didn't want to mess up and get something weird. Finally, I grabbed a pack of regular ones, nothing fancy, just the basics. Then came the hardest part, getting in line. The cashier was this super cool guy who was probably my age, but still, I felt like he was silently judging me. I tried to play it cool, but I'm sure my face was redder than a tomato. When he scanned the box, it felt like the loudest beep in the world. He smiled at me like he didn't care, but inside I was dying. After paying, I literally speed walked out of there, holding the bag like it was a bomb. As soon as I got home, I remember sitting down on the couch with the pack in my hands and just being like, okay, it's done. It wasn't as bad as I thought, but I definitely learned that the first time is awkward no matter what. Alright, so I was 17 and completely terrified about buying condoms for the first time. I had never even stepped into that section of a store before. But my girlfriend and I had the talk, and I knew it was time. So I hyped myself up, put on my most confident face, and drove to the biggest pharmacy in town thinking that if it was a huge store, I could just blend in. That was mistake number one. The place was dead empty except for the one cashier, a middle-aged woman who looked like she had zero tolerance for teenage awkwardness. Mistake number two, I took way too long. I walked into the store and immediately chickened out, pretending to browse for literally anything else first. I picked up a bottle of shampoo, some deodorant, and a random magazine, all while pacing around like I was planning a heist. Finally, after 10 full minutes, I made my way to the aisle. And that's when I saw it. Not just one type of condom, not even 10 types. There were at least 20 different options staring me in the face. Ribbed, ultra-thin, extra lubricated, glow in the dark. My brain short-circuited. I panicked and grabbed the first box I saw. Trojan something, didn't even read it, just snatched it and speed walked to the register. Then came mistake number 3, the price. I had grabbed the value pack, a giant box of 36 condoms. Cashier lady scans it, looks at me and raises an eyebrow. Cashier. Wow, planning ahead, huh? I could feel my soul leaving my body. But it gets worse because right at that moment, an old man gets in line behind me, and he starts chuckling. Old guy, back in my day we didn't need that many, son. At this point I was 2 seconds away from spontaneous combustion. I just threw a $20 on the counter, grabbed my stuff and practically ran out of the store. And guess what? I grabbed the wrong size. Alright, so I was 18 and thought I was being super smooth about buying condoms for the first time. I waited until it was late at night, picked a 24-hour convenience store, and walked in like I totally belonged there. My plan was foolproof. Walk straight to the aisle, grab the condoms, pay, get out. Easy. Except the moment I stepped inside, I felt every security camera, every customer, and the cashier's soul itself watching me. I wasn't even near the condoms yet, and I was already sweating. I tried to act casual, browsing random items first so I didn't look too obvious. I picked up a bottle of water, then a pack of gum, then for some reason a banana. Bad choice in hindsight. Finally, I made it to the aisle. And that's when I saw a mom with her toddler standing right in front of the condoms. I panicked. What was I supposed to do? Just stand there awkwardly waiting for her to leave? That would make me look even weirder. So, I did what any rational person would do. I pretended I was there for something else and started reading the label on a bottle of lubricant like it was the most fascinating thing I had ever seen. Bad move, because she noticed. She gave me the dirtiest side eye I've ever seen, grabbed her kid and walked away quickly like I was some sort of danger to society. With the coast finally clear, I lunged for the first box I saw, stuffed it under my water bottle, and power walked to the register. But of course there was a line. I stood there, box of condoms in hand, stuck between a grandma buying lottery tickets and a bored-looking cashier who was younger than me. When I finally got to the front, the cashier scanned the condoms, looked at me, then looked at the banana, then back at the condoms. And then he smirked. Cashier, big night planned? I wanted to die on the spot. I just mumbled yeah, threw some cash on the counter, and walked out without my change. To this day, I still wonder if that cashier tells my story to other customers. Alright, so I was 17 and absolutely terrified of buying condoms for the first time. My plan was simple: go into the pharmacy, grab a box as fast as possible, and pay without making eye contact. Easy, right? Nope. The moment I walked in, I felt every single person in the store knew exactly why I was there. The elderly cashier, judging me. The random lady picking out toothpaste, judging me. The dude stocking shelves, definitely judging me. I made my way to the family planning section, pretending to browse shampoo on the way like I totally just happened to be there. When I finally got to the condoms, I realized there were way too many options. Like, why does anyone need warming, cooling, ultra-thin, XXL, extra ribbed, her pleasure, his pleasure? What the hell happened to just normal condoms? I was standing there way too long, just overthinking everything. And then, disaster struck. A group of girls from my school walked into the aisle. Not just any girls, the popular ones. The ones who would absolutely tell everyone about this moment. I panicked and grabbed the first box I saw, not even looking at what I picked. I power walked to the register hoping to get this over with. But of course I picked the one register with a super chatty cashier. She was an older lady, probably in her 60s, and as soon as she saw what I was buying, she smiled knowingly. Cashier, oh honey, starting early, huh? I was already dying inside. Yeah. Then she picked up the box, actually looked at it and said, Cashier, oh sweetie, these are strawberry flavored. You know these are for, well, not for regular use, right? My brain shut down completely. I had accidentally bought flavored condoms. I turned bright red just standing there, unable to process what was happening. And then, to make things even worse, an old man behind me in line leaned over and whispered, You must be dating a real special girl. I have never wanted to disappear so badly in my life. I paid, took my box of completely useless strawberry condoms, and sprinted out of the store. And to this day, I have never gone back to that pharmacy. Alright, so I was 17 and absolutely terrified of buying condoms for the first time. My plan was simple: go into the pharmacy, grab a box as fast as possible, and pay without making eye contact. Easy, right? Nope. The moment I walked in, I felt every single person in the store knew exactly why I was there. The elderly cashier, judging me. The random lady picking out toothpaste, judging me. The dude stocking shelves, definitely judging me. I made my way to the family planning section, pretending to browse shampoo on the way like I totally just happened to be there. When I finally got to the condoms, I realized there were way too many options. Like, why does anyone need warming, cooling, ultra-thin, XXL, extra ribbed, her pleasure, his pleasure? What the hell happened to just normal condoms? I was standing there way too long, just overthinking everything. And then, disaster struck. A group of girls from my school walked into the aisle. Not just any girls, the popular ones. The ones who would absolutely tell everyone about this moment. I panicked and grabbed the first box I saw, not even looking at what I picked. I power walked to the register hoping to get this over with. But of course I picked the one register with a super chatty cashier. She was an older lady, probably in her 60s, and as soon as she saw what I was buying, she smiled knowingly. Cashier, oh honey, starting early, huh? I was already dying inside. Yeah. Then she picked up the box, actually looked at it and said, Cashier, oh sweetie, these are strawberry flavored. You know these are for, well, not for regular use, right? My brain shut down completely. I had accidentally bought flavored condoms. I turned bright red just standing there, unable to process what was happening. And then, to make things even worse, an old man behind me in line leaned over and whispered, "You must be dating a real special girl. I have never wanted to disappear so badly in my life." I paid, took my box of completely useless strawberry condoms, and sprinted out of the store. And to this day, I have never gone back to that pharmacy. Alright, so I was 16 and I had just started dating this girl from my school. We weren't planning anything yet, but I figured I should be prepared, just in case. Problem was, I had zero experience buying condoms. I had no idea what I was doing. But I psyched myself up, walked into the biggest grocery store in town, thinking I'd blend in better, and made my way to the dreaded aisle. That's when I realized there were way too many options. Thin, ultra-thin, ribbed, warming, cooling, extra large, freaking glow-in-the-dark. Who the hell was I, a high school junior, to make this kind of decision? I stood there way too long, pretending to read the labels like I was studying for a final exam. And then it happened. An older couple walked into the aisle, like gray-haired, probably someone's grandparents. The old man glanced at me, then at the condoms, and gave me this knowing smirk. The grandma, she just straight up cackled. I panicked, grabbed a random box, threw it in my basket, and bolted to self-checkout. Except it wasn't working. The machine froze on me, and suddenly, I hear, "Hey, let me help you with that." I turn around. It's my high school crush. She worked there. She was the girl I'd liked for years. And now, she was standing right next to me, staring at the screen, staring at the one item in my basket. There was this awful silence as she tried to keep a straight face. Then she says, "I think you need to scan it again." I'm dying inside. I try again. The machine beeps, she presses a button, and a loud robotic voice goes, "Please wait for assistance." At that exact moment, my mom's best friend walks up to the checkout next to me. She sees me, she sees my crush, she sees the condom, and she just bursts out laughing. I paid as fast as I could and ran out of there. The worst part? Next day at school, my crush walked by me in the hallway and whispered, "Hope you got it to scan." I still think about that to this day. Alright, so I was 17 and had just started dating this girl. We weren't quite there yet, but I wanted to be prepared, So one night I finally worked up the courage to buy condoms. I figured I'd do it smoothly and discreetly, just grab a box, mix it in with some other items, act natural, and get out. Easy, right? Wrong. First mistake, I went to a pharmacy 2 blocks from my house, in a small town where everyone knows everyone. Second mistake, I went at 6 p.m., peak rush hour, when half the town was running errand. So I walk into the store already sweating and head straight for the aisle with condom. I'm trying to act casual, but in reality, I'm standing there for way too long, just staring at the shelves like I'm trying to solve a calculus equation. Then I hear a voice. "Can I help you find something?" I turn around. It's my neighbor's mom, my actual neighbor's mom. The woman who has known me since I was 5, the woman who once made me cookies when I scraped my knee. She works here, and now she's looking at me, smiling politely, waiting for me to answer. My brain malfunctions. I panic and grab the first thing my hand lands on. It's a pack of pregnancy tests. She sees it. Her smile fades, her eyebrows lift, and in that moment I realize I have made things so much worse. Now, instead of being a responsible teenager buying condoms, I look like a dumbass kid who has already screwed up and is now desperately trying to confirm something. I can't go back. I commit. I force a smile and say, "Nope, just needed this. Thanks." Then I turn and speed walk away. At this point, I should have left the store. But no, I was determined to complete my original mission. So, like an absolute genius, I loop around the aisles, grab a random energy drink to make it seem casual, and finally snag a box of condoms before heading to checkout. And guess who's working the register? My best friend's older sister. She sees the energy drink. She sees the pregnancy test. She sees the condom. And then she sees me. There's a long pause. Then she grins and says, "Busy night?" I do not respond. I just tap my card, grab my stuff, and leave as fast as humanly possible. The worst part? The next day at school, my best friend walks up to me and just bursts out laughing. His sister told him everything. And for the next 2 years, my nickname in our friend group was Plan B. Alright, so I was 17, painfully awkward and absolutely dreading the idea of buying condoms for the first time. But my girlfriend and I had the talk, and I knew it was time to man up and get it done. I decided to go late at night, thinking the store would be empty. Big mistake. I walk into the Walgreens, and of course the second I step inside, I run into my aunt. My actual aunt. She's all, "Oh, hey sweetie, what are you doing here so late?" Panic. Pure panic. What do I say? What do I do? My brain completely short-circuits, so I blurt out, just getting some, toothpaste." Toothpaste. That was the best I could come up with. She just smiles and goes, "Oh, I need some too. I'll walk with you." So now I'm awkwardly pretending to browse the toothpaste aisle, waiting for her to leave, when I realize she's just standing there, actually comparing toothpaste brand. It's been 5 minutes. She's reading the labels like she's about to write a research paper. I decide to make a break for it. I casually say, "Oh, I forgot something, be right back." Then I speed walk to the condom aisle like I'm on a secret mission. Here's where things get worse. As I'm standing there scanning the options, I hear a group of girls giggling. I look up. 3 girls from my school, including one I had a crush on. They see what I'm holding, their eyes go wide, one of them whispers, "Oh my God." At this point, my soul has left my body. I grab whatever box is closest, speed walk to self-checkout, and pray to every god in existence that I can just get out of there. Guess what? The machine won't scan the box. I try again, nothing. Then the screen flashes. "Please wait for an attendant." I swear to you, time slowed down. A loud beep goes off and the old lady cashier yells, "Oh honey, I'll help you with that." At this point, everyone in the store knows. The girls are still watching, my aunt is still somewhere in the store, and the old lady cashier is now holding my condoms in the air, inspecting them like she's about to give a TED Talk. She finally gets them scanned, hands them to me, and I kid you not winks and says, "Have fun, sweetie." I have never left a store so fast in my life. Alright, so I was 16, awkward as hell, and absolutely terrified at the thought of buying condoms. But I had a plan: go to a store far from my house, grab them super fast, pay, and get out before anyone noticed. Of course, nothing ever goes according to plan. I walked into this huge pharmacy, and suddenly, it felt like I was in the middle of a spotlight. The place was weirdly quiet, and I was convinced that every single person in the store knew exactly why I was there. I made a beeline for the family planning aisle, but when I got there, I realized I had a bigger problem. Why are there so many freaking options? Ribbed, ultra-thin, warming, cooling. What does twisted pleasure even mean, and why do some boxes have 30 packs? Who is out here buying condoms in bulk like it's a Costco membership? I started overthinking everything. Did I need lube? Was I supposed to get a brand name? Were the cheap ones bad? What if they broke? At that moment, I heard a voice behind me. First time, I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was an old man, probably in his 60s, holding a bottle of aspirin and grinning like he'd just caught me stealing. I stammered, yeah?" He just nodded like some wise old wizard, then reached past me, grabbed a box and plopped it into my hands. "Go with these," he said, "trust me." I looked down. Trojan E and Z, a very basic choice. No fire and ice nonsense, no neon glow, just a simple, reliable condom. I muttered a thank you and went to check out, still reeling from my unexpected mentor. But of course, the universe had one more test for me. The cashier? A girl from my class. She looked at the condoms, looked at me, and tried so hard not to laugh. I was mortified, but then I remembered the old man's confidence. I took a deep breath and just owned it. "Gotta be safe, right?" I said, grinning like an idiot. She snorted, scanned them, and said, "Yeah, good call." I walked out of that store a changed man. Moral of the story: sometimes you just need a random old dude to guide you through life's awkward moments. Alright, so picture this: I'm 17, clueless, nervous as hell, and standing in the middle of a brightly lit convenience store, psyching myself up to buy condoms for the first time. I had a game plan: walk in, grab the first box I see, pay, and leave like nothing happened. Easy, right? Wrong. The moment I walked into the store, everything felt 10 times louder: the door chime, the buzzing fluorescent lights, the sound of a tiny old lady opening a bag of chips in the next aisle. I casually strolled toward the family planning section, trying to act natural, but I swear every step felt like I was marching to my own execution. Finally, I found them, the wall of condoms. I expected maybe 2 or 3 options, but no, there were dozens. Ribbed, ultra-thin, extra-large, warming, cooling, twisted, glow-in-the-dark. And a box that just said Magnum in intimidating bold letters. I had no idea what to get. I panicked and grabbed the first box that didn't have a terrifying name. Then disaster struck. I turned around and saw my neighbor, a 45-year-old dad who used to coach my little league team, standing right there, staring at me. I considered just dropping the condoms and sprinting out of the store, but it was too late. He had seen. He gave me this knowing smirk, nodded, and said, "Proud of you, kid." I wanted to evaporate on the spot, but the nightmare wasn't over. When I got to the counter, the cashier was a girl from my high school, someone I had 2 classes with. She looked at the condoms, looked at me, then raised an eyebrow. I panicked and said the stupidest thing imaginable. "They're, not from me." Why did I say that? She just stared. And then, in the longest 5 seconds of my life, she slowly scanned the box, put it in a bag, and smirked. "Sure," she said. I paid and practically sprinted out of the store. To this day, I have no idea why I said they weren't for me. Like, who was I buying them for? My uncle? My pet goldfish? Moral of the story, just buy the damn condoms. No one actually cares. Alright, so let me take you back to when I was 16, awkward as hell, and absolutely terrified of buying condoms for the first time. I had a girlfriend at the time, and we finally decided we were ready, but there was one huge problem. I had no idea how to actually buy condoms without looking like a complete idiot. So I did what any teenager would do. I overthought it to the point of insanity. I spent an hour Googling what size to buy, then another hour watching YouTube videos about different brands because, for some reason, I thought the cashier would quiz me on latex durability. Finally, I worked up the courage to walk into a pharmacy. I figured I'd just grab them quickly and get out. Wrong. The store was empty except for the cashier, a bored-looking lady in her 50s, and a group of 3 girls from my school browsing makeup near the register. Panic mode activated. I grabbed a random box off the shelf without even looking at it, speed walked to the counter and put it down like it was a bomb I needed to disarm immediately. Then the cashier picked up the box, squinted at it, and smirked. "Ribbed, for her pleasure," she read out loud. Loudly. I wanted to die. The girls near the register turned to look. One of them giggled. I considered sprinting out of the store and living in the woods forever. But then it got worse. "You got a rewards card?" the cashier asked. No. "You want to sign up? It's free and you get discounts on future purchases." "Ma'am, please, I am not trying to be a frequent buyer here." I shook my head so fast I probably looked like I was having a seizure, shoved a crumpled $10 bill at her, and practically dove out of the store. But the best part, when I got home, I realized I bought the wrong size. That was the day I learned 2 things. 1. Teenage me was not built for high-pressure situations. 2. Buying condoms is 100 times easier when you stop acting like it's a felony. Okay, so I've been meaning to share this story because I think a lot of people can relate to the utter awkwardness of buying condoms for the first time. Let me take you back to when I was 19. I was in a relationship with this girl who I'd been dating for almost a year, and we'd reached a point where things were getting more serious. We had a couple of conversations about the next step, and, well, it became clear that I had to take the lead and go buy condom. I'd never done it before, and I was terrified. To put it into perspective, I had never even bought anything from the adult section of a store. Every time I'd walk past that aisle, I'd try to pretend I wasn't looking at it like a kid avoiding the candy aisle when their parents said no. So the idea of actually buying condoms was so far outside my comfort zone, I almost talked myself out of it a few times. But the pressure was mounting. We were planning a weekend getaway, and I knew it was going to be the right time. She was amazing, and we'd had the talk about using protection, so there was no avoiding it. I had to do this. I spent the whole day thinking about it. I'd made a mental list: go to the store, find the aisle, pick a pack, and pay for it without passing out from embarrassment. Easy, right? I decided to head to the local Rite Aid because it was the closest, and I figured I could just run in and out. Of course, as soon as I pull into the parking lot, I start feeling this wave of dread wash over me. I was practically sweating, and I kept thinking about all the scenarios that could go wrong. What if I ran into someone I knew? What if the cashier made a big deal out of it? What if I didn't pick the right ones? I grabbed my keys and basically ran into the store, trying to keep it cool. I walked toward the back, where the condom section was, and when I turned the corner to the aisle, I was hit with the first wave of panic. There they were, rows and rows of boxes in every color, shape, and size you could imagine. It felt like the most high-stakes decision I'd ever made. Do I go for the ultra-thin ones, ribbed? How about the ones that say they're for enhanced pleasure. I had no idea what any of it meant. I started reading the labels like I was in a chemistry class, trying to understand the differences between all of them. After what felt like an eternity of indecision, I decided to go for the classic regular one. They were simple, no gimmicks. I figured if I was going to screw this up, at least I wouldn't make it worse with some weird experimental choice. I grabbed the box and tried to act casual, but as I walked to the front of the store, it felt like the box was glowing in my hand. I was holding it like it was a bomb, trying to hide it under my jacket. I kept checking the clock in my head. How long had I been in the store? Were people watching me? I was convinced everyone knew exactly what I was doing. The worst part was that the checkout line was packed. Of course it was. Finally, it was my turn. I stepped up to the register, holding my breath. The cashier was a woman, probably in her 40s, and I'm not even kidding. I'm pretty sure she could sense my panic. She didn't say anything, just looked at the box, then scanned it and put it in a bag. I don't know if it was my nervous energy or the fact that I was holding my breath, but the beep of the scanner felt like a gunshot in the silence. She gave me a quick smile, didn't make any awkward comments, and then just said, "Have a nice day." I paid, grabbed the bag, and literally speed walked out of the store. The whole walk to my car, I was sweating. I kept thinking that maybe the whole store had been watching me, and the bag had some neon sign on it that said "First-time buyer." When I got in the car, I had to just sit there for a minute. I stared at the bag like it was some kind of magical artifact. I couldn't believe I had actually done it. But as I drove home, I started to laugh at myself. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. In fact, it was kind of anticlimactic. No one cared, no one was judging me. The world was still turning. And even though I'd worked myself up so much over the whole thing, it was a lot less embarrassing than I'd imagined. The first time you buy condoms is always a big deal in your head. You think it's going to be awkward, you think you'll be judged, but in reality, it's just a normal thing that everyone does at some. Looking back, I was just a nervous teenager who didn't have the confidence I have now. After that, buying condoms was no big deal, it's just part of life. Alright, so I'm sure this is a rite of passage for many, but buying condoms for the first time was easily one of the most nerve-wracking experiences of my life. It's funny how something so simple can feel like such a monumental task when you're in that awkward first-time stage. I was 20, and I'd been in a serious relationship for a little over a year. My girlfriend and I had talked about sex for a while, and it was clear we were ready to take that step. But I knew there was one thing I had to do before anything happened: get condoms. The thing is, I'd never bought any before. I'd seen them in stores, but I'd always just avoided the aisle, pretending I didn't see them. I wasn't exactly the most confident person at that point in my life, and the thought of walking into a store, picking out a box of condoms, and actually buying them was terrifying. I had this vision of it being like an episode of a sitcom where everyone stares at me and I get all flustered. One Saturday, my girlfriend and I were hanging out, and we had been talking about finally doing the deed. I knew the time had come, but the thought of getting the condoms kept hanging over me like a storm cloud. So I decided to just get it over with. I'd driven to a CVS down the street, telling myself it would be quick and easy. But, of course, as soon as I pulled into the parking lot, my stomach was in knots. I walked in like a man on a mission, trying to act as casual as possible. I made my way to the back of the store where the family planning section was. I could feel my heart racing as I turned the corner and saw the aisle full of condom boxes. I must have stood there for at least 10 minutes trying to make sense of the option. There were so many choices: ribbed, ultra thin, extra lubricated, textured. I didn't even know where to begin. Was there a difference between the regular and the extra pleasure ones? Would I seem inexperienced if I grabbed the classic pack? I felt like I was making a life-altering decision. I eventually grabbed a pack of standard, regular-sized condoms. I figured that was safe, no frills, nothing fancy. But then, as I stood there holding the box, I started to panic. What if someone saw me? What if the cashier judged me? It felt like everyone in the store could read my mind and knew exactly what I was doing. After a solid 5 minutes of hesitation, I marched to the front of the store, keeping my head low. The checkout line was long, and of course, I ended up behind a mom with her 2 kids who were being really loud. The kids kept running around, and I was trying so hard not to make eye contact with anyone. I wanted to just disappear into the floor. Finally, it was my turn. The cashier was a middle-aged guy, maybe in his 40s, and I swear he looked at the box for a moment longer than necessary. I didn't know if he was judging me or just scanning it, but it felt like the longest 2 seconds of my life. I couldn't even look at him. When he handed me the bag, he gave me this polite but neutral smile. It didn't feel awkward at all, but to me, it was like the most embarrassing moment in the world. I grabbed the bag quickly and nearly ran out of the store. My hands were shaking as I tried to put the bag in my backpack. Once I was in the car, I just sat there, staring at the bag for a few minutes. I had done it. The anxiety I'd built up in my head was 100 times worse than the actual experience. I realized in that moment how much I had overthought everything. When I got home, I couldn't stop laughing at myself. It felt so ridiculous now. The box of condoms sat there in my room and I just looked at it like, that was it? I felt a sense of pride in overcoming my nerves, and honestly, it made me feel more grown up. I also realized that no one in that store had cared at all. Everyone was just doing their own thing, and I was the only one making it into this huge deal. After that, buying condoms became completely normal. I never got embarrassed again, but I'll always remember that first time walking into the store, thinking I was about to make a huge mistake, and realizing that it's all just part of life. If anything, I learned that sometimes the anxiety and fear are just in our heads, and when we finally take that step, it's not nearly as bad as we think it will be.